Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, sponsored by the National Health Association. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and today I'm very delighted to have as my guest Dr. Malcolm Mackay from down under, all the way from Australia. Dr. Mackay is a board certified in lifestyle medicine. He's a fellow of the Australasian Society of Lifestyle Medicine. He's a strong proponent of plant-based living in terms of helping people resolve lifestyle issues, and even the upper bar of plant-based living without added salt, oil, and sugar. So welcome, Dr. Mackay. It's a pleasure. Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association, the oldest organization in the world championing the extraordinary benefits of a whole plant food diet and healthy lifestyle, as well as water-only fasting. We believe that health results from healthful living and focus on evidence-based science that promotes the health of you and your loved ones, as well as the health of all animals and the environment. We feature experts from a cross-section of disciplines within the plant nutrition, vegan, psychological, environmental, and animal compassion sectors. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, the NHA's Director of Health Education.
Thank you, Frank, for giving me the opportunity to speak on your podcast.
Yes, well, I always like to start because people, don't necessarily know you. So in the terms of a little bit of background, coming through your own medical training in the early stages of your life, what were the important considerations or aha moments that put you on this path to more plant-based living and so on in your life? Was that prior to your professional training, or did it happen once you had gone into your medical training?
Almost surprisingly, it was actually in medical school. And it was a juxtaposition of two lectures. One lecture was on atherosclerosis, and the crusty cardiologist showed us all these gruesome slides. I was a 20-year-old of damaged hearts and brains. And he said the inevitable process of atherosclerosis. And as a 20-year-old who had a bit of a sort of idea that he'd like some longevity and was also looking for a bit of improved sports performance, this didn't look good at all. And as luck would have it, in the same semester, a community health lecturer told us about people in other parts of the world. Like I particularly remember the people of highland Papua New Guinea who ate diets that were, low fat, no added salt. In other words, they lived on sweet potatoes, these particular people, and they never got atherosclerosis at all. And so that for me was, okay, this is not inevitable. Look at those risk factors. Everybody's doing them. So I was in on it from there. I was going to eat the minimally processed, no added sugar, salt, oil, low-fat diet of these other peoples of the world, of Central Africa and rural Asia and Papua New Guinea.
Right. So while that was an aha moment to realize that these conditions could be prevented by eating in a particular fashion, when did the next step occur in your understanding that not only could they be prevented, but they could actually be reversed? Because reversibility is something that is really just not taught in medical school, as you know. In the United States, and I'm assuming it's probably similar in Australia, the MDs are typically trained to be disease managers. So the idea that many of these chronic conditions really can't be changed, so we're just going to manage them with different forms of medication and hope for the best. So when did that next step of understanding come in that, wow, not only could this be prevented, but wow, I can even work to help this be reversed?
That might have come soon after the beginning of my journey. I discovered that I wasn't mad after all, and that other practitioners in the past had noticed this, had seen this in the medical literature. In particular, Nathan Pritikin, I came across one of his books, and of course he talked about the reversal of coronary heart disease. I'm sort of think that my full understanding of just how many diseases can be reversed, put into remission with whole foods, plant-based and lifestyle, I don't think I was really fully appreciated the full sort of breadth of effect. And until much later, until perhaps even 2012, 2013, when I connected with a US-based movement and attended the first of the Plant Nutrition Project, plant-based nutrition healthcare conferences, and heard Neil Barnard and Cordwell Esselstyn and Scott Stoll talk in Naples, Florida.
And that was a turn. I know Forks Over Knives had an impact too on you. I was reading your bio. That was something that was revelatory too for you to see that, which was kind of an interesting story because that really highlighted the friendship between Dr. Esselstyn and of course Colin Campbell, which really when he did his study, the China study, those two became fast friends. And then Esselstyn was very intrigued about applying those principles to see just how much heart disease could be reversed. And of course, those studies became profound and iconic, really, in the entire field of lifestyle medicine. So, yeah, I know in terms of your application of this, there are some interesting pieces that I know you like to talk about. One is really understanding the composition of foods, really looking at that a little bit closer. Because we know, and I know in Australia, probably like in America, you have a profound, pandemic of obesity like we see all throughout the Western world. And of course, the incredible solution to obesity and obesity-related diseases, including heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, is all centered in this concept of calorie density within the SOS-Free plant-exclusive world. So why don't you speak to that a little bit? I know that's something you wanted to share with the audience out here.
Yes. In Australia, we're very much catching up. We've caught up with the US obesity, heart disease, diabetes pandemic, and very much in a situation, I think even more than the US, the vested interests of meat, dairy, oil are very much winning in Australia, and a low carb diet sort of the go-to. We put calorie density right at the center. And, when I talk to patients, when we hold our webinar events or our live-in events, we give a lot of emphasis to that because it's not just, this is for people who are not familiar with it, the concept of measuring how concentrated the calories are in food, like how many calories per pound or for example, is in the food. And this is not just important for weight management, where you want to cut right back on the foods that are very high calorie density and increase the ones at the other end of the spectrum, but it's also sort of central in just making a whole foods plant-based diet work. Like if you try and eat all broccoli, you're not going to do very well because you just won't get the calories. You'll lose weight, but you'll feel weak and tired, and it's just not sustainable. So people need to have some understanding so that they can put more emphasis on what Dr. McDougall would call the starches, the sort of low to moderate calorie density, tubers, whole grains, legumes as the sort of core of the diet. Certainly with plenty of fruits and vegetables, but they won't sustain us. I think when we look at people's diet diaries, I think also understanding how high in calorie density, well, obviously the things like the oil and the processed food, but even understanding how high in calorie density the nuts and seeds are and the peanut paste, and that, if people have their bowl of oatmeal and add a tablespoon of every imaginable nut and seed, they can actually end up with quite a high fat diet. And I know this is sort of a debate a bit of controversy even in the whole foods plant-based movement about where to be on the starchy low fat end of the spectrum versus the higher fat end of the whole plant food spectrum. But as I see it, most of the research, most of the evidence, most of the healthy populations are more towards the lower fat end of the spectrum. And it doesn't take a lot of nuts and seeds and peanut paste and cashew sauce to really blow the diet out into quite a high fat diet.
Well, it's I was having this discussion with Dr. McDougall because he originally, of course, has always suggested a very low fat approach. And the fact of the matter is there are benefits to adding plant fats, as we know. So having a small amount of nuts or seeds or even avocado. But I think everyone is in agreement that because those foods, like nuts, can be 80% of their calories derived from fat, and these fat foods can be as much as several thousand calories a pound, that we're never talking about more than an ounce or two in any one particular day. And I think, unless you have real issues with weight gain, I think having some of those plant fats can be quite protective for heart and brain and nervous system and all of those things. So we're all in agreement with, I think that, Esselstyn had such a unique population of people with very advanced heart disease. So categorically just taking out all of those foods probably made sense. But for the general person trying to adhere to this approach, having a little bit of those fatty plants, nuts and avocados, small amounts, probably rounds out the diet. But we know that 90 to 95% need to be those low calorie dense tubers, starches, fresh fruits and vegetables. So I think everybody's kind of in agreement now without being too overly restricted if we can. It's interesting. I was looking at something that you had written on Facebook, and I think it's important because we're talking about obesity. And as you know, you address this body positivity movement that is around where, people that now are kind of embracing their obesity and fatness as if it's a badge of honor to hold on to. And you made the very important point that, like with other diseases, whether it's diabetes or people with high cholesterol, we're not judging them as people, but we're also not condoning that they maintain these risk factors that we know are very profound for causing devastating outcome. So speak to that a little bit. And you made the point that body positivity movement kind of undermines the lifestyle medicine field in a way, because it's making people feel like they don't need to make healthy changes. They can just be comfortable in their obesity, fatness, overweight. And it's a mistake. It's a huge mistake.
Yeah, we've actually got several forces sort of working against us introducing lifestyle medicine. One is the physicians, the cardiologists, who are really worried that if people embrace this whole foods, plant-based approach, that they'll immediately stop all their medications. So there seems to be a concern in the medical profession out there. But you could put me into hot water here, the hot political subject, the body positivity. You'll notice in the thing I wrote, I sort of related it to, made the obesity just another sort of health risk thing that happens along with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, poor blood sugar control, that could all really, including the obesity, be considered just a side effect of the lifestyle, but mainly the type of food we eat, the type of food, not just the quantity. It's really quite delusional for there's quite a lot of this going around in current polarization and tribalism in both of our communities, where people get onto a particular side of the fence, and the truth, the truth is lost. Because it's just simply not true to say that having obesity is, not a problem and you can have health at any size. But and in Australia, we're particularly sensitive to all this political correctness, and potentially it makes it a lot harder for doctors to sort of try and offer help to patients. I hope we never get to the day where we sort of say, do you mind, sir, if I measure your blood pressure? And it's not that I want to say anything bad about it being high. It's sort of got to that point with body weight. But as I said, it's just one of the things that happens. The underlying problem is the type of food that people are eating.
Right. We're going to take just a short break. I'm here with Dr. Malcolm Mackay. We're going to take a short break and hear from our sponsor, the National Health Association, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the NHA Health Science Podcast. Dr. Frank Sabatino here, encouraging you to check out the NHA membership. For just $35 a year in the US and $55 internationally, you'll have access to a wealth of resources, including our quarterly full-color print magazine, Health Science. Stay updated on the latest health tools, inspiring stories, and exclusive events like the NHA Conference and plant-exclusive cruises. Join us at healthscience.org/membership and make a difference in your life and the world. I'm Dr. Frank Sabatino, your host, and now back to the NHA Health Science Podcast, where more exciting insights await you. Welcome back to the Health Science Podcast. I'm here with Dr. Malcolm Mackay, and we're really discussing at this moment, we were just talking about calorie density, the impact on obesity. You know, one of the problems that was tied into that body positivity, which was unfortunate, is that there was so much body shaming that went on, and you talked about political correctness, and of course that became an issue. Nobody wants to be shamed, but at the same token, you know, when we talk about risk factors, you know, we don't shame people for being a diabetic. You know, they're who they are, and they have a blood sugar instability, and people need to get right with the idea that it's not an attack on them personally. It's addressing a very important risk factor that we know has repercussions for many chronic degenerative changes. So I think once we can cut through that body shaming part of that, and I think we can get back to some sense of sanity in relationship to looking at health problems for what they are and not getting involved in the political correctness of how we discuss them, because that really becomes an impediment to science. It becomes an impediment to logic. It becomes an impediment to people getting well, actually. And that's not, you know, as physicians, that's a tough road for us, because we know we're trying to help people get well, and we have to address those issues. When you talk about that, what about then as you're working with people? Let's go in. I understand that you also have an immersion program that you created, and you have and I've done this for so many years, so I'm very curious about how you do your residential program. Can you talk about that? I know you and your wife Jenny are involved in that together, correct?
That's right. And we've brought in.
Jenny's still there? I know she was hiding in the wings. If she wants to stick her face in the screen, we can bring her in too. This is, and now there's Jenny Mackay. There we go. Okay. Yes, yeah, so I'm very curious, and I know our audience will be, about how you implement your immersion program, your residential program.
Yeah, we started the programs in 2017, and we started it as a 5-day, 5-night event, and did about a dozen of those. Usually we'd have anything from 9 or 10 people up to 12. I think once 16. Had 16. So we did about 12 of those, and then we moved to a new venue, which was a beautiful venue run by a spiritual meditation group up in the Yarra Valley. Yes, and we do have kangaroos. You can always see them when you go walking there.
Well, there you go.
And the program started with us talking about aspects of nutrition. And yeah, we do talk about energy density. Jenny gives a great talk on energy density. We also talk about the pleasure trap. And looking back a bit to what you're saying about the nuts and seeds, some of this is behavioral. Like part of the reason Caldwell Esselstyn says no nuts and seeds is he says as soon as I say you can eat walnuts, the patient has, a bag of walnuts in front of the TV and another in the center console of the car. And so we're also aware of, the behavioral aspects of nutrition. If people think they can eat a little bit of oil, then there's a bit of oil on this and there's a bit of oil on that. And then when they go out, they don't notice how oily the food is. So there is that behavioral aspect. And we do in our immersion events spend a lot of time on how to make behavior change and change your habits, and introduce a lot of the material from Doug Lyle. But yeah, in our new event that we've held 6 of, there's now a full 7 days, 7 nights. We've in expanding and making it longer, we brought in another partner, a dietitian friend, Dr. Peter Johnston. But we also have expanded it to become more of a lifestyle program. And sure, whole foods, plant-based aspect gets the biggest emphasis. We have a vegan chef because we need to get the food perfect for the purpose of this event. We also have a personal a fitness trainer come in, and we have a mental health specialist come in at the end of the week and talk about our trauma responses. So we've sort of expanded the program, and we have some yoga and meditation and walking, and I'm always up for a running group, but usually I'm the only one. And I think when we talk about our event, we're often on about the high adherence. Like, unless you smuggle food past our sniffer dog, don't really have a sniffer dog, into the program, it's all 100%. We make a big effort to make it 100% SOS-free, low-fat, whole foods, plant-based, lots of leafy greens with the breakfast. We're always encouraging people throughout the program to eat more. A lot of them think they're going to go home, gaining weight, but they don't. Because that high adherence in 7 days, it means that people by the end of 7 days are going, oh, my fingers don't hurt, my joints don't hurt anymore, my brain fog's lifted. And this is hugely motivating for people to want to continue on, as Dean Ornish talks about this, not many people go.
When you do that, talk a little bit about the kind of cases that come in. I'm assuming that you'll have people, like we all do when we run retreats, they come in with high blood pressure, they come in with high blood sugar, and there's no other option but sometimes during the course of that week to have to reduce medication, because the lifestyle is so effective at lowering blood pressure and lowering blood sugar. So I'm assuming you're dealing with monitoring these people and having sometimes to make these decisions during the week to kind of cut back on medication and things of that nature. Is that correct?
Yeah. Like, I make the point that I think this is the only medically supervised, whole foods, plant-based immersion event in Australia. And when I say medically supervised, that's me. I do consultations while we're there, and anyone who looks like in their profile they send us, at particularly high risk, like they're on insulin or they're a lot of antihypertensive medications, I'll see them, in the first day or so. And we're there the whole time. Like, we're there at meals with all our participants. We stay there in the adjacent rooms. If there's any crisis, I have occasionally done consultations like at 5 a.m.
Right.
I think some of the most remarkable immediate changes in medication is particularly the people with type 2 diabetes who are on insulin, and you need to reduce their insulin really quickly, like by about the second day.
Right.
If you haven't sort of reduced their insulin, perhaps even by half, then they're having hypos by about the second morning. Blood pressure, most modern blood pressure tablets, are not sort of too bad for inducing unwanted hypotension, but it's certainly something I monitor. And then when people go home, I give them all a PDF of a letter to their physician saying, so-and-so has done this program, it's safe and evidence-based. You may need to continue to de-prescribe as their health improves. And we're quite pleased. We don't have any formal studies of what happens to all our participants. It's difficult because they're not volunteering for a study. They're paying to do an event. And also they're at all different stages. Like, some of them are already doing apparently healthy vegan diets and
Right.
still find that they get improvements in the 1 week. And others have already made changes in the previous month. But we're quite satisfied with the follow-up we do, because we do follow-up Zoom meetings. And Jenny's been receiving emails during the last few weeks since the last immersion we ran during October. And it's like, and when we had a Zoom follow-up meeting of that group, it's like, gee, I've lost 4 kilos. My husband's lost 4 kilos. Someone else says, I've lost 5 kilos. We have a lot of participants who we then see at later sort of webinars or Zoom meetings we hold for all our alumni. And obviously some are lost for follow-up. And there are some that have been back to 2 immersions, one guy even 3. But we get a lot of people who are, doing it several years later and are still getting great results.
So you do your follow-ups are they formalized, the follow-ups on Zoom? Is that how you do them?
We offer a bi-monthly webinar that everyone can join, and so we might only get 20 people out of there's more than 200, actually 250.
We've had about 250 people go through our immersion events.
I see.
And if we bring in the seminars post-pandemic, their webinar series, those events we've had about 500 people go through. But the webinar seminar or the webinar series is a fairly brief introduction to the nutrition, whereas the immersion delves right into the behaviour change. And one of the amazing things that comes out of the immersion is the group support that develops very quickly at every event, and where sometimes we think, we could walk out of here and leave them because they're all educating each other and supporting each other.
So is the event, the location, is it a place that people can actually easily drive to for most of your population that comes to you?
It's about an hour and a half out of the centre of Melbourne.
I see.
And we try and help people, because we have quite a few people who come from others from interstate and fly into Melbourne.
Okay.
And we sort of try and sort of link them up so that they can share rides and to make it easier for them to get there. Yeah.
I'm here with Dr. Malcolm and Jenny Mackay, and let people know the location, the web address where they can actually follow and find out more about what you guys are doing.
I think for the if you're interested in those events, and particularly the immersion events in lifestyle medicine, I think melbournelifestylemedicine.com.au, that would be a website to go to.
And then there's a website in your name too, right? drmalcolmmackay.com too? Yes.
Yes, and there's a third website, which is when the whole forks over knives things was starting up, and I'd left my city of Adelaide to live with Jenny in Melbourne in 2012, we immediately started building a website, wholefoodsplantbasedhealth.com.au, and that is Jenny's an ex-university librarian. It's sort of a librarian's website. It's an information website where I write information about various subjects and diseases, and Jenny builds links of resources that people can link out to other websites and other people who have maybe even explained it better than we have.
Your immersions occur how many times a year? How many do you do a year?
We've done 4 a year, but right at the moment, with the cost of living pressure in Australia and the beautiful venue only giving us limited weeks per year, the last couple of, or this year, next 2024, we're down to 2 events, one in March and one in October.
Now that's
right, September.
In between that, you're running just programs online, or do you do any in-person doctoring? Do you see any patients in person?
Oh yes, I'm still in medical practice.
So you have an active regular practice that you do in lifestyle medicine.
Yeah, 2 really. One is an in-person practice, which is not all lifestyle medicine by any means, and the other one is through my home office where I am now. I do a lot of telehealth consultations to patients. Really, my license covers the whole of Australia. So I do telehealth consultations to people across Australia. And like I have people, for example, who have severe heart disease, find out about, Esselstyn and Whole Foods plant-based.
Right.
Want a doctor to sort of be, if you like, their lifestyle medicine specialist to sort of give them further advice.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, you were saying something. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, how is the climate for lifestyle medicine? I mean, I know sometimes things can be a little prohibitive. I know during COVID, Australia was a really tough place to be in terms of a lot of the pressure that was going on in terms of vaccination and so on. I don't know how much that affected you, if that affected your practice at all in any way, but how is the climate generally for people that are practicing lifestyle medicine versus very orthodox medical care in Australia? What is the climate like there?
Not great, not great. We've had the low carb movement. You know, it wouldn't be so bad if they were eating all nuts and avocados, although I could say more about those, but I won't. But you know, the low carb movement is about eating less whole grains, legumes, fruits, and more meat of all kinds and dairy foods and oil, which is not healthy at all. And you know, it's associated. Anyway, I won't go into that. That's really dominating in Australia at the moment. So if you randomly went to a doctor in Australia and they gave dietary advice, they'd probably tell you to eat less whole grains, legumes, and more meat. And in fact, while the American College of Lifestyle Medicine promotes a whole food, plant predominant diet, and the Australian and I think the British lifestyle medicine groups, they sort of can't make any definite dietary direction recommendations because they've been so strongly influenced and they're so busy pleasing all the low carbers that are part of those movements, you know, who would like, who are really promoting diets that are quite high in meat, although at least we all agree on the fruits and vegetables and the processed food, but that's about it. Yeah, so that makes it difficult. The reimbursement system in Australia is different to the US. You get more money for doing shorter consultations than longer ones. You know, per hour you get a lot more. And in the pandemic, they brought in a you know, national health insurance fund rebate for telehealth, but then the doctor groups rapidly had it taken away unless you'd actually seen the patient in person in the previous year. But so if I have new patients who don't see me in person and only telehealth, I guess there's no insurance rebate. But I don't overcharge them. You know, I'm not in this just for the money.
Yeah, I think that's probably a common issue. I mean, the people that do lifestyle medicine, even in the U.S., that are very adamant and passionate about it, I think they have to be very committed because income is less. I think there are a little more stipulations, and it's not quite as easy as just doing the routine things that come out of medical practice that, you know, the reimbursement is as you described. So you have to have a certain passion and dedication. And in America, I respect that. I respect that in Australia too. And it's very intriguing to me that these low carb, high protein approaches, every several decades, they keep rearing their ugly heads. I mean, you know, you can go back in America to Stillman and Atkins and all of these original high protein, low carb diets, and then they kind of fade away. And then people are always looking for that quick fix because we know when you adopt those diets, there'll be some initial weight loss, but of course, it's an illusion. It jumps right back on, and then it only reinforces the idea that people are mortgaging their health future with these kinds of diets. So it's so intriguing that they keep rearing their ugly head, so to speak. You know, are you familiar with? He passed away now. Were you familiar with Dr. Alec Burton in Australia?
No, I wasn't. That was really before my time or when I first became interested. I wasn't aware of his existence. But I understand that Alan Goldhammer trained here in Australia under.
Yeah, Alan trained with Alec ran arguably one of the most comprehensive water fasting institutes, you know, outside of Sydney. So he was there for many, many years. He was a very well trained. He's really iconic in the NHA movement. He was really one of the real motivating father figures for all of us. So Alan, myself, Alec Burton was kind of like someone we all looked up to. I just didn't know if you had any knowledge of the kind of work that he was doing when he was there. He didn't die that many years ago. So you were actually a very practicing physician while he was running his fasting institution. But I guess that's much more, you know, low key. So in terms of the when you're dealing with the behavioral changes, how do you find the compliance of your people? I mean, it's one thing to go plant-based. When you set the bar at SOS-Free, that's a more difficult journey. So how do you find the compliance? How do you find the reception of people to those kinds of recommendations and their consistency with staying with it? How do you observe that?
I guess, we educate them on things like the pleasure trap and the sort of classically conditioned, eating, cramming response that Doug Lyle would talk about. We give quite a lot of emphasis to adding in, like to adding more healthy things into your plate, of eating enough of the SOS-free whole plant foods so that you're not as tempted by the other foods. And for example, when we're at our immersion event, we get all the participants to sort of workshop in small groups about what are the barriers going to be to continuing this, and what are some strategies that you can come up with that you might use for eating out, for dealing with friends and relatives, for travel. But I guess, with using positive psychology, we sort of need to do our best to sort of praise people for what they are doing well, and they're already feeling guilty about their little indiscretions, and it's sort of like it's really health coaching about trying to help them to do a little bit better.
Malcolm, how is the accessible food supply where you are? Do you have really good farmers markets and accessibility to good quality food? Is organic food an issue in Australia? Is it a concern there? How prevalent is it? How is the food supply generally where you are?
Generally speaking, I mean, there's less food products in the supermarkets, but most of our food's not processed food anyway. We've got very good produce here. It's more expensive than the US, and mostly grown in different parts of Australia because Australia varies from being cool southern climate to tropical northern climate.
Right.
So we have quite a good food supply here. Organic, not as much organic food on the market. You'd have to look a bit further afield, know where to go. There might be a limited range. It could be twice as expensive. So, for example, we always emphasise to people that to eat all the produce, to eat the kale, to eat the berries, to do that first. And the little bit of extra sort of tweaks they can make if they can get organic and they can afford it and it's reasonable quality. But so that's the situation here. I actually, when people talk about our modern foods and our vegetables, and they've been bred to be different and they're not as rich in nutrients and the soils are a bit depleted in this and that, I do point out that never in human history have we had such a diverse range of fruits and vegetables, leafy greens available at hand all year round.
Absolutely. So in terms of where you and Jenny are at now, what kind of directive, what's your vision for what you would like to accomplish and do next? Or are you very comfortable with what you're doing? Or do you want to build on that? What's your plans for the near future?
Yeah, we read a book called 4,000 Weeks, but we think we'll probably live for 5,000 weeks. Just 100 years. We only live for about 5,000 weeks. It's not long, is it, Frank?
No.
So at the beginning of the year, we considered this, decided going to the international conference was really important to us, as was travel. So we drove to the Grand Canyon. But we also decided that our mission was to help and support people who had sort of seen this, who wanted to do this, to sort of support, educate them. And there are other areas we could work on, like environment or animal welfare or public health lobbying. But we've decided that our mission really is, and I mean, I'm a health practitioner, our mission is helping individuals and small groups to adopt whole foods, plant-based and other healthy lifestyle behaviours to enhance their health and therefore to enhance their quality of life. And that's what we're going to continue to work on. And my long-term plan is, I'm actually nearly 65, which is great because I'm 65 next year. I'll be in the next age group up, and I'm going to enter a half marathon.
You're going to beat all those masters. You're going to beat all those masters guys. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. But I think in the future, I'll be doing less of the general medical practice, family physician type stuff, which has become very administrative. And I think I'll be more focusing on the lifestyle medicine and the telehealth and the programs and upgrading my website and working with Jenny on all of our programs.
Beautiful. Well, Malcolm, as we wind this down, do you have any final words you'd like to share, any insights or information you'd like to share with the audience out here?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the National Health Association. Great to have an organisation that's not afraid to be uncompromising in promoting, whole foods, plant-based, SOS-free nutrition. If I was to give people any tips, I would say that if you're treating a disease or you don't really know what's going on in your body under the surface, then I would always recommend that people aim for a high level of healthy dietary adherence, to a high level of fitness, but then to make the best choices day by day they can, under their particular life circumstances.
Well, I want to really thank my guests today, Dr. Malcolm Mackay and Jenny Mackay, for sharing their information, their words of wisdom, and Malcolm's experience. And I urge you to follow them if you have interest in being part or understanding more about their programs. Go to the website. You can see that on the show notes that we have. And I really want to thank the people out there that joined us today, because without you, we couldn't do what we do. And I want to really thank you for being part of this active and healthy community. And on behalf of the National Health Association, I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and I look forward to being with you on the next episode of the Health Science Podcast. Thank you so much. You've been listening to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association. Thank you for joining us today and for your commitment to evidence-based health science that backs a whole food, plant-exclusive lifestyle and contributes to the well-being of all people, animals, and our environment. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino. Be sure to leave a rating and a review, and we'll see you on the next show.